promises that I can't define. And I'll make it, yes, I am coming on. My soul will left away. Yeah.
Hello and welcome to the Midweeker. We are here to talk about everything to do with Sydney rugby, the ins, the outs, the shenanigans, and of course your backstage pass. Brought to you by Cluch TV, and we're here at the Glenmore Hotel in the Rocks. I'm joined by my co-host Jimmy, who is dressed very formally today.
Yeah, I've gone corporate gym.
Yeah,
Corporate gym. I thought I'd shake it up, but what a pleasure to be here at the Glenmore. And who else are we joined by tonight, Larl?
Couple people coming by today. We're going to be joined by Damien Fitzpatrick in the house, and then a little later on we'll have Sam Shires as well.
Yeah, Eastern Suburbs number 8, aggressive. What a gun! I'm looking forward to it.
Let's get straight into the episode today by talking about some hot topics. Of course, the Waratahs have had a great few weeks in a row. Everyone was really hoping, I guess, or certainly the Tars fans were, that they could keep that momentum going, but unfortunately they lost on the weekend 11-38, going down to the Brumbies. Thoughts on that? I guess everyone was hoping that we'd see that winning spree continue.
Yeah, look, it was a pretty hyped game in terms of the media before it, and Dan McKellar, I think, had the choice comment, didn't he, that kind of came out and said the Waratahs are world beaters. I
had that down in my notes to address.
Sorry, that's one joke still.
Stolen it already.
It's a very tough place to win. To go down there as a New South Wales team, you're going against at the moment a very, very good Brumbies team, but even when the Brumbies are struggling, it's an incredibly hard place to play.
What is it, Fitzy, that's so difficult to win down there? Don't tell me, is it the cold or is it Brumby Jack? What is it?
Well, I mean, it was cold on the weekend. No, I think it's just more, it's been well highlighted, I suppose, the intensity that the Waratahs and the Brumbies matches bring, and you know, particularly, you know, the Brumbies do talk a lot about their hate of New South Wales, and it's been spoken about probably more commonly now because players are coming and going, and you know, so players will come up to a new team or join a new team, and you know, I've had it at New South Wales where we'll get one of the ex-Brumbies players up, and you know, they'll talk about what the Brumbies will talk about during the week, and there is a genuine hatred there because for a long period of time it's the old chip on the shoulder.
Yeah, it's little brother.
It's little brother, and in the the traditional sense, it was where a lot of the players that were discarded by Queensland and New South Wales particularly ended up. And then early on in their the formation of the team, they had a lot of early success.
The comment that was made by Dan McKellar about the world beaters, do you think that was reflective that sometimes the Tars get a bit too cocky? Do you think that was?
Yeah, I think it was just more of a comment of the media. I mean, I know Dan, he's not.
Which is smart. It's good to have that hype before a game.
Yeah, he's probably taking a leaf out of Eddie Jones's book, which is I think Jimmy's trying to do the same thing. But no, I think there was a couple of questions that Dan probably just got sick of because the Brumbies had been the form team.
Yeah.
They were still the form team, and I think a lot of the questions were around the Waratahs and how well they were going. And I think he was just having a subtle barb, just keeping people in check on who the actual front runners of the comp were, and where the Waratahs are in, I suppose, at the stage that they've got and the group that they've got.
Well, speaking of front runners of competitions, we thought we saw it all last week with Southern Districts with their win over Sydney University. When we go to our next hot topic in the Shoot Shield, 34-5 away from home, Southern Districts going down to Randwick, and that south of the harbour rivalry is its own sort of rivalry, just like the ACT Brumbies and Waratahs. That's a huge result and one of the biggest from the weekends, isn't it, Fitzy?
Yeah, and I mean, it's frustrating because everyone hates Randwick as well. So, I mean...
Everyone?
Yeah, oh, well, particularly people up at TG Milner. But yeah, I mean, it's a massive win for Randwick and a big, reality check for probably a team that came in off a very good win and probably, we've all been after good wins. Coming into training on a Tuesday night in Clubland after a win like that makes it a little bit easier, and then you get brought back down to earth and find a way to regroup. Reality check, exactly.
Who else got a reality check, and that was Manly against West Harbour, and one of their biggest wins of the season for West Harbour. They've had some very close losses this season, but as of Manly, it's all been very down to the wire with the losses Manly have had. But West Harbour as a club, another rival during your days at playing for Eastwood, a tough club to play against.
Yeah, they are a tough club. Eastwood, West Harbour Days, obviously big on the calendar for both clubs. And yeah, I mean, traditionally you're running into some very big boys and a lot of Polynesian heritage running around in the West Harbour jersey. So whether you get the win or not, you are going to be damn sore on a Sunday morning. But they're a great club and probably one of the better areas, you know, hang around with for a beer after the game as well. You know, they play bloody hard on the field, but afterwards they're really good fellas. And it was good, you know, good to see them get the win.
I love that.
Yeah.
They can, you know, give it everything on the field. Like, the game's the game, but then just that camaraderie, because that's the thing. Despite being on different teams, you're still at the end of the day playing rugby, and that whole community vibe is what the essence of Shoot Shield and certainly, you know, Sydney rugby is supposed to be.
Yeah, and I loved playing at West Harbour because you came off the field, and the other thing people forget, you know, the crowd can be provocative and all the rest of it, but at the end of the day, that you've got 30 people on there whose families are in the crowd, and so once the game's finished, all the families are mingling. And so, you know, you've got guys...
It's not as easy to be nasty
Yeah, you can't be nasty.
Surrounded
You're
by
not
their
going
kids.
into the... You know, the teams don't separate. You essentially come out of the change rooms and then everyone's together. There's kids around, there's wives around, parents and grandparents. And then it's just a really nice community atmosphere in clubland, which I always loved at West Harbour because the families of the players and the broader community of West Harbour were very welcoming post the 80-minute whistle.
Great club culture down there at West Harbour at Concord there. And a special shout out to Warringah Rugby Club who announced mental health round for last week, and I think that was a really nice touch. So
that is needed at the moment as well.
It absolutely is.
Oh my gosh,
hats off to Warringah and Phil Parsons for making that happen.
Guys, absolutely huge result this week in the Women's Jack Scott Cup. We had the Wildfires 53-0 win over Gordon. Now, this is the first time the Wildfires have competed in this comp. How fantastic of a result is that?
It's huge. It's huge up there. I've seen and spoken to guys from Newcastle Hunter of how much that win meant over the weekend, because it was a tough day at the office on the TV game on 7-2 for the Newcastle boys. They didn't shame themselves by any stretch of the imagination either, of course. But that women's team was hot to trot. They were doing well.
That's
Fitzy.
a huge score.
Yeah, and I mean, that competition as a whole, Fitzy, you've overseen it, obviously in your role at Rupa now as the president of Rupa. Just seeing women's rugby being celebrated like this, how good is it, mate?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the shining lights of our game, isn't it? And you know, at the end of the day, we're probably taking it right back to, you know, 2016 and what the women's sevens did. They really put the women's game for our code on the map, and it's gone from strength to strength. And yeah, as you said, to see a new team come in from Newcastle into that comp and to put a scoreline like that, and there's no one who loves a win more than people in Newcastle, right? I mean, they haven't had a lot to cheer about in terms of their professional teams. They've got a lot of mates who are just, you know, they're still watching Joey highlights from the Knights days.
The grand final,
I mean, it's awesome to see them playing and mix it with these Sydney teams.
So, guys, a huge result for that side, and also co-coached by former Wallaroo Brooke Saunders. Obviously, one of the things we have seen, sadly, Tokyo 2020 obviously not occurring, but great to see, particularly the calibre of women that we have playing back or coaching back in these sides at the moment as well. Yeah,
it's awesome. And I mean, as we were saying before, I love the fact that the women's game's growing, and I love the fact that the 15s is now becoming, you know, it's becoming a game and a place where players actually do want to play, because it was really easy for girls to come in and learn the sevens game, which I think was a brilliant platform off the back, you know, of Rio. But so many of them now are crossing over to 15s, which I think is so good, because as a rugby purist, I love to watch 15s and I love to watch full scrums, and to watch so many girls come in, join the sport in the sevens, but then also go on, you know, to join 15s.
Why do you think that is, that we get them in the sevens first and then we go on to 15s?
I think it's just an easier format to learn the basic skills. So we've got to remember that rugby is still completely in its infancy in the female, you know, in the female realm, exactly. And you know, to catch, pass, tackle, you know, counter ruck, some of these skills that are all in sevens, it's a really easy place for it. Well, not easy, but it's an easier place to learn it because you get more repetitions during a game.
Right.
Whereas in 15s, because there's so many people on the field, sometimes you don't get to, and you don't get to practice those skills. But in 7s, you're always touching the ball. You've got to make a one-on-one tackle. So you learn these skills really quickly. And then I think the girls are picking it up so quickly now, and they're looking at people like, Shani Williams, Shannon Parry, that are going, then crossing over to 15s, then coming back to 7s. And girls are like, no, I can play, the expansive 7s game and have the Olympic dream. But then, you know what, I can also, rough and tumble and go mix it with, the other girls and maybe aspire to a Wallaroos jersey as well, which is awesome.
And I suppose it's that skill set, isn't it, Fitz, that we've seen women from all different sporting backgrounds that has been captured and developed at that 7s level. And for it to come into 15s rugby, it's so exciting. But not just at that Wallaroos level, at a club level. How exciting is that to be seeing Elliot Green, Chloe Dalton running out there for the Rats and other players amongst that Jack Scott competition? Yeah,
and I think it's fantastic when you've got, I must admit it would be incredibly scary as a new girl to rugby watching Elliot Green run at you. I mean, I particularly wouldn't want to give her too much space because she'd burn most professional men's players as well. But to have someone like that, and as you've said, Chloe Dalton, these type of players that play at that top level internationally, to come back down and throw a club jersey on, and I bet you they're playing a super hands-on role in the coaching as well. Yeah. Because knowing those girls, they want the game to grow more than anyone, and they've played such an instrumental role in what 7s and what women's rugby's become in the country. And I mean, they everyone does know it, but they probably don't get enough credit for what they've done for rugby. And I know on those club nights, I'm sure Elia and Chloe are down in those, in their club colours, helping the new girls play.
And even just knowing that they're there encourages a whole lot of younger girls. Just knowing that that's kind of, the calibre of people that are in that comp, gets so many more girls signing up. Like having these role models that are there that they get to see on a weekend would just be such an incentive for them to play.
Absolutely, and that's and in the men's game as well. Like that's the best thing about club rugby. You can go and arrive at a club, and you pay your fees, and you might be playing 4th grade. But before training, you can pull up your car next to a Wallaby who's rolling in.
Is there someone like that for you?
Matt Dunning.
Yeah.
Loved him, and I remember coming into Eastwood, and Eastwood, had numerous Wallabies. I grew up loving Matt Burke, and he was Eastwood, but like rolling into Eastwood as an 18-year-old, and I got the opportunity to play 1st grade, and a couple of games in, I think it was a buy of the Super Rugby. So in one weekend, Ben Robinson, Ben Alexander, Matt Dunning, these three front rowers rolled in and squeezed me out of the team. But honestly, that weekend they put Matt Dunning at hooker because it was just like, they're like, we're playing all these props in the team, it doesn't matter. Yeah. But I was just like, wow, sitting in the room as an 18-year-old, and these guys have gone from, like, they were playing test matches a week before, and then they're sitting there.
Should that still happen, Fitzy?
It definitely should. It's just matching the calendar, and the players want to, and the administration want it to happen. It's just matching up. Logistics. It's trying to match up the global calendar, right?
Yeah, which is hard.
It was just, back in the day when I started, Shoot Shield, it tailed on to long, so I think club rugby kept going through till about end of September, and Super Rugby finished in July. So from July, you had every player who wasn't in the Wallabies playing Shoot Shield.
Well, we've even seen that this year because Hodgie, who we had on last week, he was saying that Bernard Foley's obviously been going a few to his training sessions.
And of course he has, yeah. They trying to put a jersey on him? Yeah.
But that's the same thing, getting those people, and imagine all of those Sydney Uni boys having Bernard showing up. So.
Yeah, it'd be incredible, yeah.
The other thing we are seeing go from strength to strength, not just women's rugby, is the Kent World Cup. Over the weekend, a big shout out, 200 games to Matthias Braun from the Mossman Wales, as well as 100 that game also for James Webb, your old club, Fitzy, growing up, going through Mossman.
Blue and white.
Still proud.
Still proud.
Look, it's a competition that is filled with passion. It's a competition that's filled with very good players as well. Do you get to see much of it now that it's live streamed on Cluch TV? And can we see you out there in the double blue of Mossman anytime soon? Or are your days fully done? I'd love to hear it.
There's been some requests since I retired. I have a very supportive brother over in Singapore who is continually telling me that there is one more game for me in the blue and blue for Mossman Wales. And I've said it to him. I said, mate, I'll play if you play. So he's got to get himself back fit again and get himself over here.
Seems fair.
Yeah, exactly. I I said, mate, I'm in. I said, I'm in if you're in. So we've kind of put something like that on there. But
Family packed.
Yeah, we don't. I unfortunately don't. You know, playing professional rugby, you don't get to see an awful lot of it because the broadcast and Saturday games when Saturday's on. And then obviously when you're not playing Super Rugby, there is a requirement for you to actually go to your shoot shield. Usually there's players do want to go and support their secondary club, which is their shoot shield club. So you don't get enough time to go back to the Kent World Cup or schoolboy games for that matter as well. I think there's so many players that came through that pathway system as well and want to get back and watch some great games of rugby, but just don't have the opportunity to.
Of course.
Yeah. Well, even Cluch now is streaming some of the school games and that sort of stuff. And
I was telling Jimmy I watched the Joey's Riverview game.
Yeah, we had that conversation.
Good result. Yeah. Well done, boys. Well done. I had a lot of friends.
Are you plugging every single team you've ever played for?
You're very good,
Fitz. You know who you are. Well done. We made a lot of old Joey's boys very happy.
We were just having a conversation just before we went on air, and that was around a playoff final system between the Kent World Cup and maybe the team that comes last in the Shoot Shield and the team that comes first in the Kent World Cup, having a playoff series to get into the Shoot Shield with it being maybe broadcast or at some sort of cash prize to make sure that it's a windfall for a club to be involved in the Shoot Shield. Would love your thoughts on that whilst we're on camera, Fitzy.
Yeah, I mean, it's...
Has it changed much?
Let's see it.
Yeah, now I'm on camera, I'm going to give my real answer. No, I mean, it's something that we've seen work so well commercially in professional sports in Europe. It's probably
where you've spent a lot of time.
It's probably one of the most watched games I know in English and French rugby. We know what it does in Europe. In the English Premier League, relegation game. What do they call it? The
playoff final.
Yeah, but what it's called, the $1 million most expensive game of football in the world or something. Yep. So we can see the value it has there. Is there a pipe dream there? For sure. I mean, how good would it be if it meant that a Kent World Cup side were playing for a potential financial windfall to build a new clubhouse, to potentially have the funds to bring a women's team in that they haven't had before, to replace their stinky old tackle bags, that kind of stuff. It would be great. If that doesn't exist, is there still a place for it? Yeah, I reckon there probably is. And then it's just around making sure that facilities and things are in place that we can facilitate enough people at the games, because there's obviously crowd structure and things like that. But I think right now in rugby we've just got to tap dance our way to getting the game to where we want it to go. And I don't think things like stadiums and seating numbers and things should really come up in the conversation. We'll make it work. COVID's taught us to be pretty adaptable, and we can do that, I reckon.
Okay, we'll take a quick break now from our deep dive with the wonderful Fitzy. Here is our mid-show tune with Juan and Only.
I've been going out alone, drinking with people I don't know. We have some fun and we pretend 2 weeks from now we'll still be friends. But I don't even know their names. And if I do, I won't remember anyway. 'Cause in the morning they'll be gone, and I should be going home to my baby, yeah. She don't know what I've been doing all night long. My baby, yeah. She don't know. She don't give me what I want. One more drink and I'll be done. But who's to say I've had enough? I'm just asking for a friend who's been to myself that I don't care. I'll bring that bottle over here. And in the morning I'll regret everything that I just said. My baby, yeah, yeah, but she don't know what I've been doing all night long. My baby, yeah, yeah, she don't know. She don't give me what I want. Yeah, she gives me everything I need. Sometimes I say things I don't mean. While she's sleeping all alone, I'll come stumbling back home. You can't take it out on me. Honey, you can't take it out on me. Honey, you can't take it out on me. You can take it out on me.
Now we're going to really take a more intricate look at yourself. So Damien Fitzpatrick, as you've just heard in the first few minutes, former Mossman, former Eastwood, former Joey's, former Waratah. How many games did you play for the Tars? How many years?
Years it would have ended up being a lot more because I spent a lot of them on the sideline injured. I think it was 10 years. Unfortunately, I missed out on 2.5 full years of it with injury, which was really tough.
How frustrating is that? How do you keep motivated?
There's a whole bunch of words to describe it.
Do you get like a sports psychologist trying to help?
I did when I was I did, and I was really glad I did. And I didn't go and seek it myself. I was too young to know that that was a service. But Sharon Flarhive, our doctor, who is she's world class, and she just knew after I did my second ACL when I didn't get back on the field the first time. So I'd done all the rehab and I did it literally going back on the training field. She probably knew that was a bit of a red flag and did it in a really nice way to suggest that why don't I go and have a talk to a friend of hers. Turns out it was a sports psychologist, but the way that she presented it to me and I found it really helpful. And to be totally honest, I just ended up having conversation with people and it ends up being able to give you some coping mechanisms when the inevitable dark times come post-surgery.
That's a very important conversation for all of our listeners who play rugby, whether you're boys, girls, men or women. So hats off to you, Fitz. Yeah,
and I'm telling you, and professional athletes as well, particularly, and I say this to a lot of people, it's a tough industry to get into because realistically there's more downside times than upsides, right? We all know there's only one winner at the end of the year, and when you put your heart and soul and everything into that season and 95% of the teams don't get the result that they've all been trying to get to, you do have a lull. But then on top of that, you have lack of selection, lack of form, injuries, everything else in your personal life that potentially could happen. So there are going to be there are inevitable downtimes that you need to learn to cope with, and I think we're getting better at it as an industry, not just.
I think as a society as well. We're just becoming. You're not an island. You don't have to deal with it on your own. There are services that exist for a reason, and it's to your benefit. But when you're injured for such a prolonged period of time, does your discipline wane, or did your motivation at all?
No, I was I don't hold that.
Throwing the towel in, being like.
No, there were times where I've always unfortunately been a realist, and it probably comes from my parents. But there were definitely conversations we had whether the injuries that I'd had. And the nature of in which I had them, there were questions like, is your body telling you potentially you maybe shouldn't be playing this sport? Or
you look like you were.
You've done everything you could. You've tried, but is there a message here that says maybe you should go do something else? That was always, I think it was my parents' way of letting it know it's okay if it's not to be.
Yes.
You've got other things outside of rugby. Go and focus on those.
Conversations though.
But yeah, and because you've been told, you've tried so hard. I was 23 at the time. I'm like, yeah, I don't want to give up on this, and I'm really glad I didn't. Like, I ended up finding a surgeon in France who could help me fix my knee, and I was able to continue playing and doing the things I love, and hopefully affecting. Maybe I didn't reach the Wallabies, which is I always wanted to do. It was my goal, and it's the one thing that I never got to achieve in my career, but. When I retired, I started to get some really nice messages, and then you take a step back and you're like, wow, the small impact you did have on people, it actually lasts with them a bit longer, more than if it affects you. Sometimes you don't know what that conversation actually does, but then when someone goes out of their way to say, wow, my son, still does the throwing drills that you told him at that one camp that you went to and, spent 2 minutes extra time on the field.
Special to have that.
And I'm like, and that when I retired was really touching to hear.
I wouldn't call that a small impact, by the way, either. I'd call that an enormous impact on the game. And as a Waratahs fan myself, over the years, the commitment you had to the club and to Sydney Rugby, it's been a huge impact. Just on that, you were one of the greater schoolboy players that came through the ranks of St Joseph's College, Joey's, and you played with some great players.
Slightly better than me, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you might say that. Well, as my, Curtly Bill, Paddy Ryan, a few of those guys that are of that.
Paddy was, Curtly wasn't.
Yeah. If he's watching, and I know he does, we'll throw that one out to him.
Parlez-vous français, Curtly?
Yeah.
I bet you don't.
That team that you went through, Joey, with is going to be renowned, just like the other teams of the years gone by for Randwick and Shute Shield. That schoolboy team will never be forgotten. What was it like being a part of it?
Yeah, that era of Joey's was fantastic. We had a really strong kind of 4 years, and my final year was the tail end of that. So for the group that we had going through school, we had a pretty nice blueprint on what we had to do to be successful, and some incredible mentors along the way. And guys that didn't go on to reach, incredible heights. Obviously, we know Curtly did, and there were numerous players in that era that went on to play professional rugby. But guys like, for me personally, I ended up being lucky enough to be captain of our side in Year 12. But I had Pauliasi Timopio, who's now the coach of East, and a great mentor and advocate for, grassroots rugby and rugby at that level as well. But someone like Pat McCutcheon as well, who came through, played a lot of professional rugby, was an amazing leader in the Sevens program as well. So these are some of the guys that I got to grow up, when I was at school, looking at how they acted and the way that, they led on the field. And I'm telling you, it came at such a young age to some of these guys. It was literally, it gets thrown out a lot. It was infectious, and I was like, I want some of that. It was awesome, and yeah, I feel that. Then at a schoolboy level, it was amazing. We had an incredible Australian schoolboys team, and I think there was probably almost 100% of them went on to play professional rugby. You had guys like James O'Connor, Matt Tamua, and you look at them now, and you don't realise at the time.
Yeah.
You don't know how good players are going to be, but I had James Slipper on one side of me, and he's gone on and played nearly 100 tests for the Wallabies, and it's incredible.
One thing that I did want to ask you was, what was the favourite side you've ever played in? Was it those early days? I mean, just because I know obviously Waratahs would be the obvious one because that's your dream.
Good Eastwood teams as well there.
Oh yeah.
Is there any time that you were just like that, the synergy of that combination and the? I think
the schoolboy. The schoolboy rugby is something you will never, you'll never get back again, because it's not professional rugby. It's literally, you're then waking up the next day after training and going to class with these blokes. And for some of them, you've been, throwing balls around on the back oval, throwing oranges out in the ref, having pillow fights with, this kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden on a Saturday, you get to Year 12 and you got one opportunity to whack a jersey on and to go and represent something that you've watched teams before you go and do. And it's really special, because essentially you are going out there with people you have spent so much time with. You've
spent a lot of time in Europe as well. Tell us a little bit about your stints there. You've had 2 major stints.
2 French stints, yeah. Loved it. Very different. The first time was definitely going over. It was first time to Europe, 24. I never really got to do the after school travelling thing was playing rugby. So the circumstances I was going over there for at the time, I'd basically missed out on 2 full seasons at the Waratahs, and an opportunity presented itself in France to start playing rugby halfway through the year. So I was basically, Super Rugby went from January through to July, and I missed out on all of that, but I was right to go at the end of Super Rugby. So instead of waiting another full half year, basically, I had an opportunity to go and play professional rugby over in France immediately.
Is that in Lyon?
That was in Lyon, yeah. And Tim Lane, who was an Aussie coach at the time, approached me and said, look, there's an opportunity here. There's a great growing club in a big city that is predominantly soccer, but we're trying to new owners come in and wants to turn into a rugby town. I'm trying to build a bit of a connection with quite a few new foreigners coming in. Do you want to join? And I said, look, this is something I really, really wanted to do.
How were you received by the city of Lyon and the players?
Yeah, I mean, originally it's quite a big city. It's not as big as Sydney. It's not as big as Paris, but it's bigger than every other French city. So they call it the little brother to Paris, But it's eventually after In my little area, I like to think that I ended up having...
You were a celebrity.
I had friends.
Wow.
I think, I used to wave at the butcher and, and I'd know where I'd go to get my pate from and the beer and...
Can you have a go at speaking some French for us?
Yeah, please.
Well, you just said hi Francais curtly.
But it does open when you can speak French. It does open. Yeah, it opens the world of France up to a foreigner incredibly quickly, and you realise that the way they live life is, it's a very nice. It's a nice lifestyle, and you only get out what you put in France. And I try and tell any foreign player who's about to sign over there, you really got to, if you want to get something out of it and experience every great thing that France has to offer, you got to give back.
Yep.
Meaning, go and dive into the culture.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Try and speak the language. Yeah. Enjoy your 2-hour lunch hour you're going to get and not get frustrated like I did for the first years. I can't sit still and, they do 2 hours for lunch.
What do they do in that time?
They
go
eat
home?
for an hour and 15 minutes of it. They do a 3-course lunch. And I don't know how long they can eat for. It's and they'll do baguettes and everything. And that was an experience in itself because, like a foreigner, you get up there and in Europe the teams all give you
so
lunch.
Impatient as well.
Oh, exactly right. So they'll go up and get their salads and then they'll go sit down and they'll napkin.
Wow.
Whereas foreigners will just get their plate and they'll just they'll pile it on and you'll get an apple. You'll get an apple and put it on the side of your plate and then you'll put your baguette in the back pocket and then you'll go back to your table and the French are just looking at you like the food's not going anywhere. Like just go back up and get it. Whereas all the foreigners then would line up all their food around and it'll be gone in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Whereas the French are still sitting there 50 minutes later and really having conversations about listening to French players. And they're tough guys, right? They love the physical side of the game. They really do. But watching them after a game or before a game when a bottle of wine comes out that is probably a little bit better than, your mid-tier French wine, to watch the guys come out and have the conversation about it. They really do get into their own culture, which is really awesome as a foreigner because you realise very quickly that their culture is not cliched. They don't put it on.
Yeah.
There is an appreciation for everything that we think they're great for. Wine, amazing chateaus, cheese, bread, everything that we think they love, they love.
You endorse Australians travelling and enjoying rugby overseas for what it is. There's a lot of conversation about the ghetto law, I suppose, for Australians that might affect their decisions to whether they go overseas or not. How would you like that to look in the future? And what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's one for me that has been asked a few times because of my role as well with the Players Association.
Yeah,
so.
Mention that.
I am pro going and experiencing everything this game can give you. And for me at the time, it served as a way to refresh and to have an opportunity to play and to potentially save my career, which I feel it did because I was able to go to Lyon and find a surgeon that could fix my knee.
So just really quickly on that,
Yeah, okay.
Because you've referenced it twice.
Yeah.
Was there not an Australian surgeon who could do it?
There was no at the time when I did my third ACL, I was actually in France. So that was basically the reason I had to find a French surgeon. And they basically did something that hadn't been suggested here in Australia yet.
That worked.
That did work. Touch wood.
Okay.
I'll probably go skiing and do it now, but yeah, it did.
That's all I want to know. You can carry on with your...
No, I'm not having go.
I'm going to press you on this, Fitzy. I'd love to hear your thoughts on where you'd like to see Australian players go, because I think then, from my perspective personally, as a big fan of seeing the development of players in the game, it would be great to see the best young talent staying in Australia. But where we find that balance, it's a really difficult place to meet in the middle at the moment, especially after hearing such brilliant things. But what great can come out of it, you've told us about as well. And did it harden you as a player to come back to Australia and say, I'm glad I got that experience, and where do we meet in the middle on this one?
Yeah, there's a lot in that question. It hardened me as a person because it took me out of my bubble that was Sydney, that I knew for so long. And I went over and I just went to a city that I had to start all over again, had to go and learn to live completely on my own. No one, knowing you down the street. You were purely there, and you were being judged on what you put on the field, not your reputation, none of that stuff. It was, we don't care what you did, who you are. We've signed you now, come perform and deliver. And essentially, you also didn't have that personal expectation in the crowd that your friends and people were watching, because essentially no one's watching French rugby. So you're going and playing, knowing no one you really know is going to comment, and you're going to get off the, you're going to go back into the change rooms, get your phone, and there's going to be no messages. Because it's 3 a.m. in Australia and no one's watched the game, right?
Yeah, wow.
Whereas you play poorly here, or you get some...
That'd be kind of liberating.
Yeah, it was really liberating. And it was also a reality check. Like when you played well, no messages. You have to tell your parents, Mum, I promise I played well. And I'm sure you did. Well done. Is there a way I can watch it? No. And she's like, okay. And same with your mates, like, how'd your season go? Oh, it went well, I'm sure. Oh, okay, yeah. But in a way, it also is really tough, because I'll tell you, for every great experience that has been had overseas in rugby particularly, there is also people that have struggled, because rugby here in Australia is brilliant, and I will always say that it is the best place to play. The conditions, the workplace conditions we've got as a professional are replicated by other codes in Australia, because we do have the best place to play rugby in terms of the way we look after and safeguard ourselves as professional players. There's
national franchises around Australia that have learned from Rugby Australia with that protection for their players, and I suppose that comes from our next point, which is your role with Rupa now and your understanding of that for the players of Australia. It hasn't been an easy season for a professional rugby player in Australia with this pandemic that's occurred. How's it been in the life for a professional rugby player in Australia this year, and can you tell us their story from this year? Yeah,
it's an interesting year, and as you said, we are very lucky that we are, as Rupa, as players, we're represented by an incredibly passionate association, and an association with a huge amount of history. And as you touched on, like our CBA is now it's been borrowed by other codes. And it is probably one of the driving forces that I believe players will choose to stay in Australia because of the added benefits that you can get and the safeguards around applying your trade here on the field in Australia. Apart from the other obvious benefits that you get an opportunity to fulfil childhood dreams and play for teams that you've always grown up playing for. But rugby is a global game, and there are market forces that are going to draw players elsewhere. We know that. And they're challenges that Rugby Australia, that Rupa, and that World Rugby are now going to have to deal with. As a player, it's been a tough year. Yeah, it's been very well highlighted. We had some really difficult negotiations with Rugby Australia regarding how, I suppose what the sacrifice level would be across the whole game, and we know they were significant. But for players, I think the players probably didn't get enough credit for what they did for the game. Originally when COVID hit in April, the players took a 60% pay cut. And for some players that meant the guys particularly at the top who took a little bit more to make sure that the ones at the very bottom were protected, and that's how we kind of scaled our model. The guys that were earning the most gave more, so we made sure that no one dropped below a threshold. A threshold that would fall below what would be deemed as a living, almost like a living wage, we called it.
Well, Fitzy, you've certainly done so much for the sport and you've had such an incredible career and you've gone on so many different kind of tangents with your career. It's something to be incredibly proud of. Thanks so much for joining us today on the show.
Joining us now for the back end of the show, East number 8, Sammy Shires. Welcome to the show. Big game this weekend up against the Newcastle Hunter Wildfires. You're looking forward to it, getting up to Newcastle?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, it'll be really good. I mean, it's one I've been looking forward to on the calendar. It's always good to have a nice road trip up there, go somewhere different, and the Wildfires have been putting in a great effort and everyone's really excited to have them in the competition. So, yeah, really up for it.
Do you notice a change in your team dynamic when you're playing away?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, you always know what you're getting when you play at home and everyone likes playing in front of a home crowd. But yeah, there's always an element of excitement going away and playing especially at a new venue. Obviously, the Shoot Shield's got the same club, so you're familiar with a lot of these. So yeah, something like Newcastle's pretty exciting.
Yeah, fantastic.
You came to Australia how many years ago now?
Just over 4 years ago.
Well, speaking before to Fitzy, because he did the reverse, he went to Europe for a few years, and he was saying how authentic the culture is in France, that they actually do love what you stereotypically think they would. How have you found it here in Australia?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of rugby, or in terms of culture?
Well, in terms of Australians, we'll get to both, but have Australians lived up to their stereotypes?
I'll tread carefully.
Please don't. You can insult us. Go for gold. We've got thick skin.
On the wrong side of the house.
Like, they don't mince their words, which is great. Always very funny, always very happy, always very outgoing people, and that's something that I loved as soon as I got here. The first club I played at here was Manly, and I guess the two things I found with work and playing at Manly is that everyone's sort of very welcoming, and everyone likes a beer.
Yes.
It's a universal language, so that always helps.
I see you've adopted the RM Williams as well. That's
nice touch.
Yeah. Well, I had to become
Very
a concrete
Australian.
cowboy as well, so I got myself a pair of those as well, which is
help you fit in.
yeah, they're good for my feet as well. So.
Well, just on the rugby, Sam, you've obviously played a fair bit of rugby over in the UK as well. Is it a different brand out here, and for any reason in particular? I mean, you hear rumours about the weather being terrible over there throughout the season, so it makes you play a tighter game of rugby. Obviously, it's a different weather pattern over here playing Shoot Shield, but does it correlate to the brand of rugby you're playing out here compared to what you were playing at home?
Yeah, it's drastically different, I think, and that's not to say there's one which is better or other. I think probably the Australian brand's a little bit more aesthetically pleasing to watch. You certainly get more tries and more running rugby, which is sort of what people say about it. But you also don't come up against so many big boys. It's not such a forward-oriented game. There's not so much of a focus on scrums and line-outs, which is sort of what the Northern Hemisphere boys love. But yeah, no, I've really enjoyed it. Over the past 4 years, it's sort of challenged me to change my game a little bit. I don't know how much it's changed. I still go back to my comfort zone every now and then. But no, it's definitely a different game.
Have you found the physicality of Shoot Shield compared to back home?
Yeah, it's definitely physical here, but as I mentioned, it's a different type of physicality, so it's not so forward-oriented here. But I still wake up on a Sunday morning feeling like I've been hit by a train, so I'd say it's still pretty aggressive.
You started off playing with Manly, and now you're at East. How did you find that transition? Were there noticeable differences?
They're pretty similar clubs in terms of what the guys are like, what the staff are like, the way they're set up. So actually, it was pretty easy. I'd say the main sort of difference is Manly tends to be a bit more of a transient club. There's a lot of backpackers who end up there. So you end up with, 10 English guys, 5 Kiwis, a couple of Argentinians, and then that will change year on year. So there's definitely a big turnover of players, whereas I think there's only 2 or 3 English guys down at East. It tends to be more of the guys who've sort of grown up in the eastern suburbs. And actually, we've got a lot of boys from Canberra, a lot of boys who come from the country as well. So there's a real diverse mix across that, but ultimately the two clubs, they're pretty similar. I think that's sort of the same for a lot of clubs around the world. Wherever you go, you get the same type of people.
You've had Richie Wolf come over to East this year from North. You played North over the weekend and got the W. How was the sideline for Richie Wolf? Did you hear anything going over the stands?
I'd love to have seen if there was actually a crowd, because we were on limited numbers at East, but he was very scared in the week. He was very sheepish, wasn't saying much. He was fine about it. He was really looking forward to it.
Yeah.
And he embraced it. And I think it would have been a different prospect if he'd gone to North Sydney Oval, but yeah.
For sure.
It's always great going and play another club, because there's never any hostility, really. It's just competitiveness. Speaking
of hostility, I think what I was trying to say before is that you were potentially one of the more hot-headed players.
So, are you all right?
Yeah, no, I've got it right this time. I kept calling Sam hot, actually, on camera before when I was trying to say hot-headed, and it made for some great bloopers, and hopefully doesn't make it to the live broadcast.
I'll make sure.
What I was saying is that brand of aggressive rugby that you're bringing, it's not going unnoticed. Is it intentional?
I think that's just the way I've always played rugby. I'm not the most skillful. A lot of people will say that. So I guess I've got to make up for it in other ways. And I enjoy the physical side of the game. That's one of the main reasons I play it. And perhaps I do become a little bit aggressive sometimes. But I think that's part of it. I definitely think that aspect of the game's sort of died down a little bit over the past 10 years, with sort of foul play coming out of the game, which is a great thing.
Sure.
So actually the aggression is now more of a physical thing in terms of...
And legal.
Exactly, legal, yeah. So you can't, which is, that's definitely a change from playing in the UK 10 years ago when I was 20 and having some guy who looked like an orc from Lord of the Rings punch you in the face in a foot of mud. So yeah, it's definitely changed.
In terms of, I guess, 2020, it's been a very strange year. How's the season been for you so far? Has it been different to other seasons? Has it felt different?
Hugely different. I guess there was so much uncertainty that we would even have a season. So I think when we came back online and we were down to sort of 10 people in a grid, and you had to keep your spacing, or you weren't allowed to touch each other, and you had to use separate balls, and all these different strict standards so we could actually get the ball rolling again. I think what it made me particularly was grateful that I got the opportunity to play again. Last year I got injured, so I missed the back end of the year. So I was planning on this being my last year, but I think I'm going to have to go again. But,
Good.
But yeah, it's. I think everyone became a lot more grateful for the fact that we do have an opportunity to play rugby. So there was a real excitement when the season rolled around again, rather than it just be the same rigmarole of playing year in, year out.
Do you think you might find another excuse next year to extend and not retire again?
Yeah, I will. I mean, they all call me an old man. I mean, I'm only 30, so...
What do you reckon the average age would be in your team?
I think there's probably only one other guy over 30, so I'd say probably 24, 25. So that's another thing that's changed over the years, that, you don't get the guys playing into their mid-30s, and perhaps that's sort of why... sort of an example of why the game's changed so much. It's got a lot more physical, a lot more fast-paced, and perhaps that's something that some people can't keep up with.
You've got one of the great number 8s that ran around Sydney Rugby in the past, Paulie Taumopio, as your coach. What's it been like playing under Paulie, and what is your shared vision for the season ahead for East?
Yeah, Paulie's been great. He has a lot of ties within our current group of boys, because he came up with coaching them in Colts. He's played pretty recently as well, so he kind of understands how the game works, and he's got some great visions for it. We're perhaps not translating them as well on the field as we should be for him, so there's definitely things we have to work for every week. We all want to win the Shoot Shield. That's our ultimate goal. We've got a great group of players that he's assembled, and the team dynamic's really good, but perhaps I think we've been left wanting a little bit in the last few weeks, just sort of switching off at the wrong moments and things like that. But I think, like in any professional sport, if you start hitting your straps way too early, then perhaps you can taper off a little bit. So I think maybe this is playing into our hands. We've got a good run of games coming, and perhaps we can build up to it and get ourselves into finals. And then if you're in finals, then it's,
anyone's game.
Anyone's game, exactly, to use that phrase, yeah.
All right, well, thanks so much for joining us and for giving us some insight there, Sam. We'll get your opinion on some of these. We've got some upcoming games this weekend. Randwick versus Eastwood at Coogee Oval. Randwick, obviously, they haven't lost yet, and Eastwood as well, coming off the back of a loss to Sydney Uni. What are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, Eastwood are tough. We played them a couple of weeks ago, and they're very, very physical. I think so. They'll be a good match for Sydney Uni, and you know, as proven by a couple of the results this year, you just don't know what's going to happen week by week. I mean, we come off the field and Ian Cohen, who's our team manager, reads out the results, and you get the oohs and ahs when you know there's a surprise result out there. And Randwick, on the other hand, Randwick are. Seems to be a really good team at the moment. They seem to have put together a good string of runs. I think they haven't lost yet. So I think that'll be a good test to see how that goes. So yeah, but the great thing is you've got such good games like this every week.
Well, another one of those is West Harbour Gordon down at Concord Oval this weekend. We just had Fitzy saying what a difficult side Wests are always up against, but the club culture they've got down there at Concord. Gordon being front runners of the competition, that's a big game.
Yeah, I mean Darren Coleman's got them in a good position. We played them first up, and you know they're a machine. I think they're definitely going to be challenging at the pointy end of the season. And West, it is tough going there to play. I think they've had a big turnover of personnel, so they're a slightly younger team, but you can't write them off. I mean, when any team at home is a hard prospect, and if you go in complacently, then you know that's when the upsets happen.
That's it.
Well, it'll be another exciting weekend, Sam. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah,
and that is it for us here on the Midweeker. We'll be back next week.
On my way to see my friends who live the cardboard blocks away from me, as I walk through the subway, must have been about 3:15. In front of me stood a beautiful honey with a beautiful body. She asked me for the time, sent across her name and a 6-digit number and a date me tomorrow night, and then she declined. No, didn't she mind? I don't think so. Was it for real? Damn sure. What was the deal? The pretty girl is 24, so when she came, she couldn't wait. Cinnamon Queen, let me update. What did she say? Said she'd love to rendezvous and asked me what we were gonna do. So stop with about a little more, wait for to Monday. Took her for a drink on Tuesday. We were making love by Wednesday. And on Thursday and Friday and Saturday we chewed on Sunday. Yeah. I've been chilling on Sunday. Night was the time when she was looking fine, and I'll be getting my smooth talker. She told me she'd love to unfold me all night long. Ooh, I love the way she kicked it from the front to the back. She felt it, and you know I am. Hope that she cares, 'cause I'm a man that'll always be there. I'm not a man to play around, baby. 'Cause a one-night stand isn't really fair. But the first impression, when it don't seem to be like that, we know they found it. And there'll be plenty of time for that. From the subway to my home, endless ringing on my phone. When you're feeling all alone, all you gotta do is just call me Monday. Took her for a drink on Tuesday. We were making love by Wednesday, and on Thursday and Friday and Saturday we chewed on Sunday. Met this girl on Monday, took her for a drink on Tuesday. We were making love by Wednesday, and on Thursday and Friday and Saturday we chewed on Sunday. Yeah.